Good evening, members. Welcome to this digital meeting of Council being held via Microsoft Teams on Tuesday, the 13th of April 2021. Before we start this evening's meeting, it is with sadness that I advise Council that since our last meeting, Councillor Carmen Bazina has lost her mother. Also, it was with deep sorrow that the Queen announced the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, who passed away peacefully last week. I would like to ask you to join me now for a minute's silence in memory of His Royal Highness Prince Philip. Thank you, members. Mrs. Harry, can I ask you to confirm the proceedings of the meeting, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Noswetha Cyngor. Good evening, members. We will not be live streaming this evening's meeting. However, it will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. If members lose connection during the live meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. However, the meeting will continue as long as it remains quorate. Democratic Services staff are available and will be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. I wish to also remind everyone that the Mayor has the discretion to terminate or suspend recording if, in her opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings or that continued recording might infringe the rights of any individual. The Mayor also has the right to remove persons from the remote meeting if that is deemed necessary. All members should have already checked their headphones, microphones and IT equipment before the meeting commenced this evening. I wish to also remind members and officers to ensure that all microphones have been muted. Group leaders, deputy leaders, cabinet members and key officers have been asked to leave their cameras on. All other members and officers, please can I ask you to turn your cameras off unless making representations. Members will need to unmute their microphones and turn on their cameras when called to speak by the Mayor. Votes this evening will be taken using Microsoft Forms. When a vote is required, the monitoring officer will direct members to open Show Conversation, where the form will appear, and then click on Yes, No or Abstain, and then finally click on Submit Vote. The names and votes cast will be recorded and published to our website following the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Harry. Councillor Mann, you have your hand raised before I start the agenda proper. I think you're on mute.
Apologies. I was just wondering why the meeting isn't being streamed live.
Perhaps I can deal with that, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Mann, we've never live streamed our meetings. We record our meetings and then upload them after the event. So at the moment, we simply haven't got the technology in order for us to live stream our meetings. Clearly, we will have to do that because one of the requirements of the Local Government and Election Act is that meetings will need to be live streamed, but that doesn't kick in until next May. So that's May 2022. So by then we will be live streaming. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trant. I'll have to check my memory. I thought we were live streaming before. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you both. Councillor Bevan, you've got your hand raised as well.
Yeah.
I'll just deal with that quickly before we start the meeting proper.
Yeah, it's just a question with regard to this system of meeting. The Zoom or webinar is far better. You can see 25 people on the screen, and then there are about 3 or 4 screens later on that you can click into. This seems to be very restrictive. All I do is turn my sound off, turn my camera off, and go to sleep. It's stupid, really. Just a moaning, really, Chair. Mayor, I mean.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Okay, I will move on to the agenda. Number 1, apologies for absence. As detailed within meeting conversation chat, if members are aware of any apologies not listed, please add them to the chat or notify Democratic Services. 2. Mayor's announcements. I've just got the one. Last month I was invited to a Zoom meeting of Abercarn Scouts to witness 5 of their Scouts receive the Scouts' highest award. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but it was my great pleasure to record a short video message to congratulate the Scouts involved for all their hard work. Members, I have given permission for Councillor Lyndon Bindon to make a statement this evening. Councillor Bindon, can you please put on your camera and microphone? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to make a statement. It is with mixed emotions and with due respect to full council that I must inform all members that by the end of this month, I shall be tendering my resignation as a councillor to the Chief Executive. It's been a very difficult decision. I'm not going to go too much into it, but suffice to say, towards the end of last year, I had a diagnosis that has impacted and continues to impact my ability. And additionally, members may be aware that I got married to my husband 3 years ago. 3 years ago today, actually, Madam Mayor, and they've had an opportunity to work abroad and they're Polish. So I've made the decision, because of the support I will need going forward, to permanently join them. I would just like to say, Madam Mayor, a big thank you to Councillor John Roberts and Councillor John Taylor, my ever-suffering ward colleagues, and to all those members of the Health and Social Care Scrutiny, of which I have been a member for many years, that have supported me in my role. It would also be remiss of me not to mention Democratic Services and Committee Services for the excellent work they do in providing support to us to carry out their role. And I know I wouldn't been able to have carried out my role as a councillor with their very dedicated support they've given me over the years. I would just finally like to say a thank you to Dave Street, and I want to say I believe, and as many will know, I've worked in social services for many years, that we have one of the best management teams of social services that I have ever come across in my professional career working in this local authority. And I will be sad to stand down, but it's unfortunately a necessary evil. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bindon. I am disappointed to hear your news, but I wish you all the best. I believe Councillor Marsden may want to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much. I just want to say all the best for the future, and I know how much this must be such a difficult time for you, and I just wish you all the very best for the future, and thank you for all your amazing hard work that you've carried out through your scrutiny roles and as a ward member, and I know you'll be sorely missed.
Thank you, Councillor Marsden. Councillor John Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to take this opportunity of thanking Lyndon for his work over the years for the people of the Aber Valley. So thank you, Lyndon. We are sorry to lose you. I do understand your reasons and wish you well for the future. Thank you, Lyndon.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Shane Cook, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor S. Can I put on record my thanks to Councillor Binding for all his commitment to social services and all his hard work over the past couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Kevin Everidge, please.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Lyndon. I've been on the Health and Social Services Scrutiny Committee for 12 months, and I've been impressed by Lyndon with his impartiality and his actual knowledge. And I'd like to wish him all the best. And thank you very much, Councillor Binding.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Roberts, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Councillor Binding. Pob lwc i'r dyfodol. Diolch yn fawr iawn am fod yn gydgynghorydd yn ward ni ac am wneud beth ti di wneud. All the very, very best. I feel like crying now. Oh gosh, he's worked so hard. Soprano, worse than tenor. He's worked so hard. And thank you so much. You take care, kid. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Mrs. Harry, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And just on behalf of the staff of the organisation, I'd just like to say thank you for your constructive debate and challenge. And but it's always been with the best interest of the organisation and the people of Caerphilly and your ward area specifically. And I wish you all the best in whatever you know holds in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay Whittle, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would like to wish Councillor Lyndon Binding and Mariusz all the very best in their new life together in Poland, and I hope that your health certainly improves. As many councillors here will know, that Lyndon was my next door neighbour, and it was is my fault, I suppose, that he really got involved in politics, but he has been an absolutely excellent representative for the people of the villages of Abertydwr and Singhennydd. Lyndon, we look forward to welcoming you back home here whenever you visit. There will always be a very warm welcome for you both here in Wales, and in particular in Abertydwr and Church Road. But please, please don't bring any more Polish vodka here. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Whittle. I'm sure everybody will join with me to wishing Councillor Binding and his husband all the very best for the future. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is to receive petitions under the Rule of Procedure 28(3). Councillor Walter Williams, I understand that you have a petition that you would like to present. Can you please put on your camera and microphone, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, this petition was raised by residents of Argoed. Objection to Argoed Baptist Chapel, development of an all-year-round refuge, night shelter and temporary accommodation. They are concerned who is going to stay there and are they going to be monitored? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Andrew Councillor Andrew Farina Childs, I understand you also have a petition that you would like to present. Can you please put on your camera and microphone, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, my colleague, Councillor Etheridge, and I have been contacted by many Blackwood residents over the past 18 months in relation to a significant rise in antisocial behaviour associated with the Kemp Forest Welfare Park. This has now resulted in the residents raising a petition which has been signed by 115 residents who have given the petition to myself to present to you this evening. The petition states the following. We, the undersigned residents of properties surrounding Kemp Forest Welfare Park, request that Caerphilly Borough Council take action against the continued effects of antisocial behaviour that we have been experiencing for a considerable time within the park and its boundaries. The park is now regularly used as a congregation point for teenagers. These teenagers are often very abusive towards residents and members of the public. This type of behaviour has a massive impact on others trying to use the park for recreational purposes. The antisocial behaviour is causing residents immense distress and suffering, affecting our health and relationships, leaving residents feeling unsafe at home. Residents fear for their own safety and their property, which is often vandalised by these perpetrators. The park should be an asset within our community. It is no longer utilised in the way it was intended. The park is regularly vandalised, leaving members of the public feeling intimidated by the antisocial behaviour. There are several suggestions that could help alleviate these issues. The reduction of entrances into the park from 3 to 2, the installation of lockable gates to all entrances, closure of the park in the evening at an appropriate time, shrubs to be planted where the youth are currently congregating, reroute one of the paths, consideration to be given to relocating of the monthly use games area, and the installation of CCTV cameras. The safety and well-being of the public, residents and our properties are paramount. We therefore call for Caerphilly Council to support residents affected by the impact of crime and antisocial behaviour by effectively combating antisocial behaviour in this area. We request that Caerphilly Borough Council consult with residents regarding any proposed community safety measures within Cefn Forest Welfare Park. We believe the above suggestions would benefit the safety, physical and mental well-being of residents, helping to restore the quality of lives to residents affected by this long-standing issue. And that was signed by 115 residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Farina Childs. Councillor Kevin Etheridge, I understand that you also have a petition to present. Can you please put on your camera and microphone, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be quite brief here. This is a petition signed by a number of elderly, vulnerable residents in a different area to Andrew. It's a tenancy enforcement issue. There's also nuisance, noise, litter, rubbish and rodents around a particular property, which I shall not mention. I've done a detailed letter to tenancy enforcement and the various officers, but it is cause for concern at the moment, and the petition has been sent to various officers within the local authority and the Inspector of Police. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. I accept the petitions as presented, which will be taken forward in line with the requirements of the Constitution. Item 4, presentation of awards. Has Mr. Price? Yeah, Mr. Price has joined us. That's good. We have one presentation this evening. Members, could I ask Mr. Gerwyn Price to put on your camera and microphone so that Council can recognise your achievements? Councillor Walter Williams, I understand that you will make the introductions for this award. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Gerwyn Price, who is the current WDC World Darts Champion and World #1. Gerwyn was born and raised in Markham and started playing darts at Markham Miners Welfare Club, progressing to the Super League of Aberbargoed. Although he started out his sporting career playing rugby and was a member of both Cross Keys and Neath teams, he gave up rugby in 2014 to concentrate on darts, which I'm sure you will all agree was a very wise decision. Gerwyn joined the Professional Darts Corporation in 2014 and made an impressive start to his career by reaching the semi-finals in the Players' Championship the same year. His darts career went from strength to strength and has an enviable list of titles to date. World 2018, 2019 Grand Slam champion, 2020 World Series Finals winner, 2020 World Cup champion with Johnny Clayton for Wales, 2020 World Grand Prix champion, and 2021 World Champion. Unfortunately, the World Championship trophy is currently being engraved, Mr. Gewin, but Gewin has a replica to share with us. Madam Mayor, would you please join me in congratulating Gewin on his success to date and wishing well for his future career. Well done, Gewin.
Well done, Gewin. Is Mr. Price with us at the moment? No, he has been having some technical difficulties. Maybe if he rejoins later on in the meeting, we'll be able to see the replica trophy. Until that happens, I'll move on with the meeting. Item 5, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Members, please use the hands up function to indicate if you have any such declarations. Thank you. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you, Chair. Just to inform members that I'm obviously the Council's representative on the Cardiff Capital Region, and I sit on the Joint Cabinet for the region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Sean Morgan, please.
My apologies, Madam Mayor, that was an accident there.
No problem.
Although, sorry, Madam Mayor, perhaps I should declare an interest in that I do sit on the management board of the CSC Foundry. I am a director on there, which is related to the, it's one of the investment vehicles of the Cardiff Capital Region. So if I could just declare an interest in that.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Andrew Whitcomb, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I also declare an interest? I sit on the City Deal Scrutiny Committee made up of 10 local authorities.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is to approve and sign the following minutes. Members, we will take minutes one at a time for accuracy, and then I will ask someone to move and second them as a true account. So the first meeting was the Special Council held on the 24th of February 2021 for accuracy first. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12.
Move the minutes, Mayor.
Second them, Madam Mayor.
Thank you both. And we move on to the council held on the 2nd of March 2021 for accuracy. So that starts with page 13, page 14.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, who's that? Sorry.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Councillor Sean Morgan.
Yes, Councillor Morgan.
Regarding item 6 on page 14. This is regarding my withdrawal of an apology, which I had made in a previous meeting to Councillor Fussell, where he seemed confused as to what he had actually said in a previous meeting, where I had made the comment that he had said that to have a hotel in a 4-star hotel in Caerphilly was pie in the sky, which I found strange coming from a town centre councillor. And both Councillor Mann and Councillor Fussell said that Councillor Fussell had not said those things. So regarding the minutes there, I think Councillor Fussell says that he confirmed he wouldn't comment any further on the matter until he'd had a chance to review the recording, and so did Councillor Mann. So I would just like to ask both councillors if they've had a chance to review the recording, where it was quite clearly said that by Councillor Fussell that he thought a 4-star hotel in Caerphilly town was pie in the sky.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Do we have anybody to reply to Councillor Morgan?
If I could.
I have raised my hand, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, it's not showing on my screen. Sorry, Councillor Mann.
I did raise it earlier to give a tribute to Lyndon, but obviously there's something wrong with the system. But anyway, yes, I was certainly under the impression that Councillor Fussell had said something different to what he actually did say when I checked the recording. I don't think he actually said what he intended to say, but the recording obviously confirms Councillor Morgan's version of the events. And in fact, I did. I'm not sure what happened between Councillor Fussell and Councillor Morgan, but I did actually confirm to Mr. Tranter that having reviewed the situation, that I realised that the recording was as it is and not as I thought it was.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Morgan, do you want to come back, or can I move on?
I would like to come back if I could, Madam Mayor, only to ask if Councillor Fussell is there to make an apology. I noticed that he did admit the inaccuracy in a newspaper article, but made no apology to myself. So I'm just wondering if Councillor Fussell is available to make an apology.
I'm not sure if he is in the meeting, Councillor Morgan, but Councillor Mann, your hand is showing now.
Right.
Sorry.
Sorry. Well, I think maybe on behalf of a member of my group that we can make an apology to Councillor Morgan. As I said, Councillor Fussell in the event didn't say what he thought he'd said or what he intended to say, but the reality was that the recording proves that he did actually, that Councillor Morgan had an accurate sort of version of the statement.
Okay, thank you very much for the apology on behalf of your group, Councillor Mann, and I'm glad that you see it was quite accurate what I had said. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm going to depart from the norm at the moment because I'm aware that Mr. Gerwyn Price has rejoined the meeting, and I understand that he has technically difficulties. Sorry, I'm having problems with my words this evening. So if we can just ask Mr. Price to switch on his camera, perhaps say a couple of words, show us his replica trophy, and we can allow him to get on with his evening. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm actually upstairs a sec, so I'm going down to get the trophy. I've, as you said, I've had technical difficulties and I'm just in my kitchen now, sorry. But yeah, obviously, there's there's a replica trophy there. It's a bit smaller than the original, but it'll do, I suppose. But yeah, that's the World Cup one, which me and Johnny won, obviously for ourselves and for Wales as well. Yeah, a few more background, which are lucky enough to win.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Mr. Price, for joining us this evening. Thank you again. We'll return to the minutes of the council held on the 2nd of March. I got to page 14.
Madam Mayor, sorry, I should have mentioned the fact that the last I heard, Councillor Morgan was quite ill, and it's nice to see him back and appears to be in good health. But, apologies, I meant to mention that earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Okay, back to page 14 and page 15, page 16. Okay, and moving on to special council held on March the 18th, 2021 for accuracy. We start with page 17, page 18, and page 19. We've already had a mover and a seconder. Are you happy to move and second all 3 minutes of the meeting, please?
Yes, move the minutes of the three meetings.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Councillor Priest. Who was the seconder?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor. Councillor Sorales.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sorales. I will hand over to Mr. Tranter now. Sorry, I've lost my place. I'm not having a lot of luck this evening. I'll hand over to Mr. Tranter for the vote. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Members, the poll is in front of you, so if you can vote on that, please, yes, no, or abstain, and then press the submit button, please. And I'll give you a minute to do that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Mr. Tranter, it's Councillor Mike Adams. I'm in as a guest, which you may be able to see.
Yeah.
I would like to post my vote in favour of all 3.
That's fine, and that's noted. Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other members who are having difficulty voting? Please speak.
Yeah, Councillor Dix, I'm in as a guest as well, it looks like it. So
okay. Are you okay with the accuracy of the minutes, Councillor Dix? All
yes,
three
sure.
sets?
Yeah, I support it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That will be noted.
Mr. Tranter, it's Councillor Jeremiah. I haven't had the voting form on screen, but I'm in favour of the meetings as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeremiah. That's great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Tranter, it's Councillor Vincent Jones. I don't see the voting on the screen as well, but I'm in favour of the minutes as recorded.
Thank you very much, Councillor James. That will be noted.
I haven't got it on the screen either.
Okay, Councillor Gale, are you okay with the accuracy of the 3 minutes, the 3 sets?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other members, any other difficulties, please? If that's the case, Madam Mayor, the minutes are approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tranter. Moving on to item 9 is the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal Connected, Competitive, Resilient presentation. Councillor Marsden, I understand that you will introduce the presentation and the City Deal colleagues attending this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Absolutely. I would like to welcome Mr. Frank Holmes, who's the chair of our investment board for the CCR, and Kelly Burns, who's also the director of the CCR. They're with us tonight now to run through and update us through a presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Kelly and Frank. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the introduction, Leader. Good evening, Madam Mayor and all members. Thank you very much for having us along tonight. I'm just uploading some slides to the screen, which Frank and I will go through. If it's okay, if we can wait to the end for questions and discussions. There's just a bit of detail to get through, so if you allow us to canter through it, hopefully we'll have a really rich discussion at the end. So forgive me, but my children are home, which means my internet is slow, but I promise they are about to make it onto the screen. So just give me a second. Okay, can everybody see that? Do you have it? Brilliant, there we go. Okay, so tonight what we wanted to do very briefly was just give you a quick run through in terms of where we are with the Cardiff Capital Region. We've just passed the first 4 years, our first gateway, our first sort of period of operation, and felt in conjunction with the leader and the chief executive, it would be a really timely opportunity to come again and speak to full council, not just about the progress that we've made to date, but future plans and ambitions, and central to which is the borough of Caerphilly. So what I just want to do here very, very quickly is give an overview about what I'm going to say. And it's really to give members some confidence, because I think when I spoke to you about probably 18 months ago now, we were very much in the foothills of growth. We were very much in startup mode. We were putting foundations in place and making sure that we had all the right processes and procedures. And I think it's really pleasing to be here tonight to say that, yes, we've got a good evidence base now that is helping to inform decision making. We've worked with Frank and the team in developing a fact-based, integrated economic growth plan, which we've adapted for COVID-19. Frank, we've got a really strong investment appraisal process, because clearly we run an open, competitive investment fund. But probably more pleasing than anything, you know, we've landed a number of investments and significant deals, which are starting to have an impact right across the Cardiff Capital Region. And you can see that to date, Cabinet's approved about £200 million worth of investments, which come with a whole slug of match funding and create private sector leverage opportunities, which, as I say, serve the whole region, not just in terms of GVA impact and jobs growth, which is potentially significant, but economic inclusion, ensuring no part of the region is left behind, is very, very critical to that. So lots of other colourful stuff. I think we've got a strong voice now, we've got good influence, we're starting to build real collateral and moving out of just being a city deal into the space of a city region proper. So really exciting prospects, and I will talk about some of this now as we go through the presentation. So just to give a bit of background information, members, and sorry, I know I've been through this with you before, but just as a refresher, so it's nearly 1.3 billion in our city deal pot. As you know, about 730 million of that sits with Metro through Transport for Wales, and the rest sits with us in our wider investment fund. Now, those big amounts of money come with big obligations, serious obligations in the form of targets, and UK government and Welsh government have set us 3 very high targets to create 25,000 high-skilled jobs, to lever in about £4 billion in additional private sector investment, and to try and uplift GVA in the region by about 5%. But I think the very clear directive and the leadership that we have from regional cabinet is we're not here to hit targets that miss the point. And we could hit some of those targets, but, you know, we could be in danger of doing, you know, the wrong things really well. You know, GVA could grow, I suppose, if unemployment increased, because those of us in work would be that much more productive. But what we're trying to do here is to really impact the things that will help us turn the dial on the Cardiff Capital Region economy. So Cabinet have been really clear. Economic growth isn't the end in itself. Economic growth is the means to creating better potential, good opportunities in the region, improving quality of life and really impacting our communities. So inclusion has become a really key part of the narrative. And I think that even though things like research and development, innovation-led growth, agglomeration economics. They're really important, and those things will keep driving growth in our cities and big towns. But we have to balance that with an emphasis on things like the foundational and local economy, making sure that we're supporting the public sector to be much more innovative and productive, and thinking about how we engage civil society in innovation as well. So economic ambitions, definitely, but these have to be matched with much more progressive social policy if we're going to create and spread prosperity right across the Cardiff Capital Region. And I think, Frank, that's something that's really at the forefront for the Economic Growth Partnership, which you kindly chair for us.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. For me personally, it's a pleasure to be talking to Caerphilly County Council today, because it was at your offices that we first put forward the idea of 3 key pillars to our plan, which was connected, competitive and resilient. And they mustn't be seen in isolation, because they all rely on each other and are intertwined. And trying to get away from, historic siloed perspectives, it was important to join all of these principles together, and realizing that if we didn't do this, we would struggle to become investable. We would be letting ourselves down in our capabilities for innovation, but also future-proofing the region against things that we didn't expect at the time, but have come to pass during this terrible pandemic. So that and those principles have served us well. We've revisited those principles, and we've revisited our plan since the pandemic started. And I'm glad to say that our plan still stands as robustly as it did back when we first came to share it with the leaders at Caerphilly County Council.
Thanks, Frank, and I suppose this slide builds upon that. And again, members, I think this is aimed at giving you some confidence that even though we have an open, flexible, competitive fund, there are no set or prescribed projects. Anybody can bid into our fund that's got a great idea and an investable proposition. We've put the groundwork in behind that. We've put in really strong foundations. So Frank, myself, working with Regional Cabinet and some of our other business, university and third sector partners, have spent quite a lot of time looking at the evidence, making sure that we gather the right insights and intelligence, that we don't have an economic plan that's predicated on being all things to all people, that we're targeting the things that we could really stand to have a sense of global comparative advantage in. And that's not everything, of course, that's few things, but I think we've made a good decision that we're going to try and stick to those few things and do them really, really well. So, we're not going to pretend we're fantastic at life sciences, but we've got great strengths in medical devices and diagnostics. We're really good at the forensic aspects of cyber, for example. We're really great at advanced compound semiconductors. We've got real strengths in InsurTech, in stage and screen production as part of the creative industries. So it's making sure that we build a credible evidence base that can underpin these things. Frank and the team in the Economic Growth Partnership, many of whom bring corporate financier experience, have helped us then to put together an investment and intervention framework so that when bids and submissions come into our wider investment fund, we've got clear framework for how decisions get made, for how due diligence gets undertaken, for how things are prioritised, and the criteria by which we measure those things. Again, we've decided to focus on the core things that can really shift in the capital region, a fund that looks at infrastructure opportunities, innovation and challenge opportunities. And importantly, and I think interested in this, it's changing the way that we see the public sector. The public sector isn't just a funder or a de-risker or somebody who can sort problems out when the worst happens. The public sector can be a co-investor, can convene around some of these big societal and economic challenges, can take risk for reward, and doesn't always have to be a funder of last resort. So it's really trying to reimagine the dynamic role that the public sector can play in this space. So we've been very much through the startup phases, Frank, and the anguish and agony of starting something up from scratch. And I think you probably very much agree we're in the scale-up phase now, which feels like a really good place to be.
Yes, Kelly, I agree entirely. I think setting up the funds in the way that we have you can see how the infrastructure funds will wrap themselves around the connected pillar, innovation around the competitive pillar, and obviously the challenge fund against and around the resilient pillar. So everything is interconnected, which is vital to have a plan that can stand up to the shocks and things that are coming our way as we move out of the sort of more fragile startup stage into a much stronger scale-up perspective.
Absolutely, and I think sat alongside that is robust governance and partnership. I won't go into this too much, but you know that the Cardiff Capital Region works across the 10 local authorities, but UK Government is our principal funder, and we've got partnerships with Welsh Government as well. But under that sits a whole myriad of the different groups and advisory boards that we have to make sure that the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet is well informed, is getting the right information, is getting different perspectives, all of which are really critical, I think, to decision making. And I think on behalf of Regional Cabinet shows a really mature model. Regional Cabinet very much see themselves as steering the ship. They don't need to do all the doing. They've got the experts that can help do that, but they can then make very clear and coherent decisions on that basis. So just in terms of how it all works then, and as I've said there, we've really worked at improving working practices, making sure that we've got rock solid business discipline. The chair of the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet is Councillor Hunt, who's the leader of Torvine. We've got 2 vice chairs in Councillor Thomas and Fox, who cover the business and economic development portfolios. Very fortunate to have Councillor Marsden, who picks up the portfolio for the foundational economy and local wealth building. And what Cabinet do is come together in the best interest of the region time and time again to make decisions that can really impact as many people as possible. So very much a consensual model of leadership there, adaptive leadership, and then our boards obviously support that. And I think the really important thing here, members, is it would be easy to have an investment strategy that, just prioritised, the biggest and the best investments. And what we've tried to do is to split the fund. So there are some investments that can benefit absolutely every area in the region. So as Frank was saying, infrastructure investment with the housing fund, with the Metro, with Metro Plus, with digital, those things will impact everywhere in the region. But the rest of the fund has to be directed where the market says that investment can best go. And our job then becomes one of making sure that those things are targeted, supply chain impacts, supplier effects can really be felt right across the region. And to date, Frank, that kind of investment strategy seems to have served the region well.
It certainly has, and I think we benefit as a board also from having a breadth of backgrounds and experiences. So on the board we have representation from higher education and further education. We have representation on skills, representation on infrastructure, finance, and many other aspects, including the economy. So that breadth of experience around that board that has been in place now for nearly 4 years has really worked well, rotating the universities and the further education colleges so that they have a place at the table, but it's not about them, it's about the sector. But at the same time, we're conscious that everything doesn't go on forever, and we're already addressing succession planning and how we keep the spirit of that board and the skill set in place. So there have been a few changes, not many, I'm glad to say. It's been a very collegiate group of people. And one of the things that has really struck us, certainly from the business community, has been the support from the Joint Cabinet and other colleagues and officers in the county councils. It's been phenomenal to see how close business and the councils and local authorities have been able to work together.
Yeah. So moving on then to our investment and intervention fund, I've covered a lot of those principles. And I think, the important one is when we make investments through the fund, we expect largely those investments to be repaid. Not every single investment will, because some are seed or catalytic investments. But we're not giving away grants here. We expect something in return for something. And I think that's a very important principle. So 20 projects have status in the Cardiff Capital Region investment pipeline at the moment. You can see that the levels of investment we're talking about and the high levels of potential job creation. And of course, projects come and go and they change, and it's very dynamic. But you know, we are making good progress, as you will see on the next slide. So just in terms of projects approved to date, projects that have been through the business case process that Regional Cabinet have signed off. You'll know many of these, they've been reported openly and in the press. The first seminal investment, as Councillor Morgan was saying, in the compound semiconductor foundry. Investments that impact the whole of the region, like Metro Plus, Metro Central, which is the comprehensive redevelopment of Cardiff Station, which will drive better connectivity into the valleys, making sure that we've got more trains, more capacity on the lines. Our housing investment fund, which I'll talk about in a few minutes' time. Some of the skills interventions that we've made into critical industries. Some smaller investments we've made in medical technologies. The Challenge Fund, which is about the public sector doing things differently, thinking about how we leverage the public sector balance sheet through different types of procurement. Zipworld, you know, up on the Tower Colliery site, which has been really important for the local foundational economy. And just a couple of weeks ago, Regional Cabinet signed off a £50 million investment in a strategic premises fund. And again, you know, we've got a wide prospective pipeline. You know, there's lots of other things that are on the boil at the moment. More investment in clusters and sectors such as cyber, the creative industries, medtech. One of the things that we're trying to put together at the moment with Frank and his team's assistance is an innovation investment fund, because we recognise that we just don't have risk capital operating to support R&D intensive businesses in the region. Digital connectivity programmes, there's a huge amount of potential there. And I think, Frank, you'll probably agree that the problem that we have is not a lack of opportunity, is it?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's synonymous with or symptomatic of where the entire sort of plan is. And that is that we have been on the receiving end of applications. But as we mature and we scale up and we are able to leverage more funding, then I think we'll move into a transition area of actually originating projects that make sense and will add significant value to the entire sort of region on many fronts, not just on financial returns, but on social and economic inclusion, diversity, as well as recognizing that we all have an obligation to improve the net zero agenda as well.
And I think that's an important point, Frank. You know, the majority of these investments are not grant investments, they're repayable investments. So we're not running the fund down. What we're trying to do here very clearly is build up that potential for the future. So
yeah,
there's other stuff.
We have an obligation to make sure that this funding lasts for a lot longer than it was designed to enable other generations that come behind us to benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the wider pipeline, as Frank was saying, looking to originate more of our own proposals that can serve the whole region, recognising some of the problems of rural connectivity, huge opportunities in terms of digital clinical futures, medtech in particular, which Caerphilly can play a very critical role in. Cyber, different types of skills offer, and you know, with energy and the prospects around hydrogen in the region as a new technology, and you know, some of the stuff that's coming out of UK government from the Plan for Growth, Connecting the Union, fusion technology, free ports. You know, there's a huge amount of opportunity, and we've got to make sure as a capital region that we're focused in terms of where that opportunity can best grow and develop. So just to give a very quick example, I think when I first joined about 2.5 years ago, Frank, one of the conversations that we were having all of the time is how do we make the region more competitive? Innovate UK did a bit of work for us, and we just weren't submitting enough bids into UK government. We weren't successful with enough bids to UK government, and it was all about becoming more competitive and confident in our offer. So the first investment, as you know, that the Cardiff Capital Region made was the 38.5 million investment in the Newport Mega Foundry. That is in the process of leveraging over £350 million worth of private investment from IQE PLC. As Councillor Morgan was saying, that whole deal is managed by an investment vehicle which is owned by all 10 local authorities. And that was fantastic because it continues to create really high value jobs. It safeguards jobs. It's having a massive impact on growth in the region. But we didn't just stop there. Given all of the other investments that the partners have made, universities, the private sector, industrial partners, together we bid into UK government's Strength in Places programme. And all in all, with our own contributions and a £26 million grant award from UK government, we've got a £42 million investment programme there that will continue to build the cluster and create jobs and growth and impact, but also, Frank, bring other partners. I know I can mention that one significant partner, SBTS, has significant plans to expand further into the region, which just goes to show some of the opportunity that we really have here.
I think that's an absolute indicator of how clusters really start to thrive in their own right when we are able to attract investment from outside of the region to complement the companies within the region. So the SBTS expansion plan is significant. It's in the order of 250 million. I'm happy to say that, and it's in our region, which is of a choice of headquarters for that magnificent company is a real testimony to the fact that they believe in what's happening in the Cardiff Capital Region.
Indeed. So what does all this mean for Caerphilly? And I suppose, that's very much a question we should be answering together. And the simple answer is what you choose to make of it. We're working really well with the team at Caerphilly to try and leverage those collective strengths and opportunities. And of course, Caerphilly will benefit from all of those things that I've set out on the screen there. The Metro Plus Caerphilly Interchange project, which is part of a wider regeneration. There are 2 sites that have been shortlisted successfully as part of our Housing Viability Gap Fund. Significant sites bringing wealth, prosperity and new housing into communities in the borough. You've got your Valleys Regional Park Discovery Gateway. There's a huge raft of work which Councillor Ridgewell will know about around ULEV, OLEV, the stuff we're doing with the taxi industry on a try before you buy basis to try and incentivise behavioural change around electric vehicle technology. We're working together on the Challenge Fund, on innovative future services. Caerphilly's had a great take-up of our graduate scheme, and I'll mention some of the companies shortly. And the work that we're doing around the local full fibre network will update all public locations in the borough with fibre, and hopefully we can build on that now with simultaneously updating private locations and premises as well. But that's just the start. We've barely scratched the surface. We've really only been doing this for the last 2 years, and I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress, but there's much more to come. And I think, Frank and I were talking about this, where we see the real sweet spots for investment in Caerphilly in the future. We've just launched that Strategic Premises Fund, which is going to offer industrial support into key locations. What we found through the pandemic is certain sectors and clusters like medtech have just expanded so rapidly. It's about expansion space, and Caerphilly has tons of potential around expansion space. So strategic sites and hubs, I understand where they are in the north and south, but making sure that our interventions can integrate into your master plans. I think the biggest opportunity that I see for Caerphilly, and Frank, we were talking about this earlier, is definitely around medtech. In terms of GBA output in medical devices diagnostics, Caerphilly is right up there. You've even got some pharmaceutical companies. I don't know how many of you saw on Sunday, Frank and I were just talking about it in the Sunday Times, that Direct Healthcare is the top British private company with the fastest growing level of profits. You know, Caerphilly-based Direct Healthcare, 133% growth in the last 12-month period is hugely significant. We've done some work with BBI Group. There's other smaller medtech companies in the supply chain. And I think that our plans around building this medtech cluster hold real significant opportunities for the county borough. General Dynamics as well, playing into the cyber and data space, is always going to be hugely significant, especially with the integrated review around the defence industry. We see lots from Caerphilly by way of housing innovation and low carbon innovations, and I think there's much more to be done there. Caerphilly's featured really prominently in the work that we're doing around planning for future phases of metro and strategic rail priorities. And I think, again, you know, in terms of Innovate UK and bringing more UK government investment into Caerphilly, you know, we've got some real target areas. And I think, Frank, our conclusion is that even though high value manufacturing will always be prominent in the borough, we think medtech is probably the significant area for growth.
I couldn't agree more. Even though, I mean, I know two of those companies particularly well. I've been involved with, I was involved with BBI from the very early days, and they're a great testimony to the capabilities of medtech in Wales and certainly in the region. But you know, Caerphilly's also got a lot of manufacturing capability, and onshoring manufacturing is definitely here to stay. Supply chain protection has really become more and more important since, you know, the pandemic and certainly since Brexit. And so, you know, I definitely see manufacturing on the ascendancy, and that's not just in the advanced section, it's across all sectors. We need to really get behind making things, which we've always been very good at.
And I think one of the big challenges, you know, there's a huge amount of investment out there privately and now available through government as part of the plan for growth, the post-COVID recovery. The issue for us is we are just a city deal at the moment. We don't have the vehicles or the mechanisms to be able to capture some of this wider investment. We don't have some of the powers. We don't have some of the borrowing abilities that we really need to maximise potential in the region. Now, I know that, you know, corporate joint committees provoke mixed views, but I think that the clear view that's emerging from the Cardiff Capital Region is they could be a really good thing, because without a regional place-based institution, we can't go for some of this big investment, and we can't compete with some of the other big regions in the UK, because our joint working agreement, our narrative is confined very narrowly to just being a city deal. So yes, corporate joint committees are on the legislature, but I think they will help us adapt from just being a city deal into that city region space and bring new financial levers, incentives, borrowing powers, balance sheet, the ability to acquire assets and to be much more innovative, which I think will help us make waves in terms of some of the big issues and opportunities that we have. So we very much see corporate joint committees as mature in the model, and don't forget the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal is already a joint committee. So this is a small evolutionary step, but could remove some of the big barriers and blockages that we have to making progress. And I think, you know, it's that maturity, that enlightened self-interest of being able to look both ways, to work with and partner with Welsh Government as our home government, but also to have that relationship with UK government, where the vast majority of these new funds and opportunities will be. So lots more to do, and we've got a very clear prospectus. A couple of weeks ago, we launched our investment prospectus for levelling up, our strategic rail priorities, to make sure that we've got a voice, that we're at the table and we're clear and consistent about the investment needs of the whole region. So, you know, this is just illustrative. It shows how the region could work in the future, very similar to how it works at the moment. The subcommittees we have are already in place. The partnership bodies we already have are in place. The real difference comes on the right-hand side of the screen, where the new corporate joint committee has the potential to take forward things at a regional transformational scale. And it's not about taking things off local authorities, not at all. It's about concurrency with local arrangements, but doing those things at scale that we can only really do as a region: transport, infrastructure, energy, digital, research and development through clusters, and making sure that we can build upon the capacity that exists at the local level. So sorry, Frank, I didn't know if you wanted to come in there.
No, only to say that, you know, we recognise that the city deal is just a catalyst. It's the start, and we're maturing into a region, and we have to be ambitious and we have to compete, because European funding is no longer going to be available. So we all know where we're going to have to look for the money, and I want us, and I'm sure you do, to make sure that the Cardiff Capital Region is at the front of the queue, whether, you know, and pushing Manchester and others behind us, because, you know, we want our share of the funding.
Absolutely, and the different powers and opportunities that will come through that. So a lot of the regions in the UK have funded transport infrastructure development through a penny on the pound of business rates. So different fiscal levers and incentives will be a really important part of building our own resilience in the future too. So as I say, a clear plan for the next 5 years. You can see the priorities on the screen there. I won't read them out, but making sure that we target UK-wide level investment for the big things that really need to happen, you know, around energy, around data, around thinking about the valleys differently, about thinking about big infrastructure projects where we can really push forward in terms of hydrogen and so on, will be really, really significant. And I think that brings me, Madam Mayor, to the last slide, really, which tries to just consolidate everything we've spoken about. We've been very much in startup mode. We're now in scale-up mode, but there's still a way to go. And of course, we will scale impact, but we will also have those returns to keep reinvesting in the region and to achieve more. So I think Cardiff Capital Region, in a very short period of time, has emerged as the key economic attractor for South East Wales. We've got good structures, governance and processes, which I think we can all feel very confident of. But to do what we're doing now and to keep doing it is not enough. The world is not waiting for the Cardiff Capital Region. Things are happening all the time. Regions are preparing. Regional development is underway in every single part of the world. And if we're going to get a share of some of the new opportunities and the investment and the powers that are out there, we need to be acting really, really quickly. But I think in terms of what we've done so far, we've set a really good roadmap out. We've got strong foundations. I hope, members, you can see that the City deal is really delivering for all parts of the region. There are dots all across the map, which has to be a really positive thing. And I think the final sentiment that I would leave you with is that, you know, the Cardiff Capital Region was an equal before COVID-19. We've got some of the most and the least prosperous places, you know, cheek by jowl. Those inequalities are going to be exacerbated by the scarring effects of the COVID crisis. And our job is very clearly to close the gaps and to make sure no place gets left behind. So thank you very much for your time this evening. We're really looking forward to questions and discussions. And on that note, I will hand back over to you, Madam Mayor, with many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Marsden. Or Mrs. Harry first. Sorry, I'm not having a very good evening tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. And firstly, I'd like to thank both Kelly and Frank for sharing with us this evening the great strides that have been taken in defining a clear economic position and role for the region. GVA has risen across the region by 1.5%, as recently determined by SKW. But so far, the approach that has been taken has been a focus upon jobs rather than productivity. And both Kelly and Frank have made that very clear in their presentation this evening. For our success to be sustainable over the longer term, we must have a focus upon competitiveness. As a local authority, Caerphilly has recently moved from the bottom 10 of the UK Competitiveness Index, but clearly we have so much more to do. We need to focus on growing the high value cluster industries that we have. And Kelly mentioned MedTech particularly. You know, we have a cluster in our county borough that we really, really need to sweat. And manufacturing, like Frank mentioned, you know, we have a very solid manufacturing industry in the county borough around food and technology as well, and we really need to sweat those further. So clearly, members, this isn't a quick fix. This is a long-term game. Locally, we've invested in a focused approach, which has included various master plans, and Kelly, you know, is very in tune with those master plans, and we're looking at where we can really sweat those master plans and get investment to make things happen. We've also introduced a regeneration board, which is modelled upon the investment board that Frank chairs, and also the planned addition of the head of prosperity to add further support and capacity to our regeneration team. Education and social care and our frontline services over the long term, they will need continued sustained funding. But without a strong economy, we are not going to be able to pay for them, quite frankly. So post-COVID, as Kelly's mentioned, you know, that gap between poverty and prosperity will grow across the region. But members, you will be aware, prior to COVID, we have a gap, you know, within the county borough of those who have and those who haven't. And that will grow, and we must bridge that gap through the creation of a sustainable local and regional competitiveness-led economy. So working locally and with our colleagues in the Cardiff Capital Region, we aim to ensure that this county borough and the region as a whole continues to be a great place to live, work and enjoy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Harry. Councillor Marsden, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you for that. I didn't mean to raise my eyes the way I did. Kelly and Frank have already referred, and may I thank them for coming along this evening as well, to just to highlight many of the aspects of the CCR work that, you know, has been outstanding, I must say, and I've obviously only joined fairly recently. So you'll note that both Kelly and Frank referred to the Challenge Fund during their presentation. And as the lead of the Challenge Fund, I wanted to give members a little more information about it. R&D, this is very much under the spotlight in policy environment. For example, COVID and the scientific discovery on the vaccine has happened as a result of R&D. UK government R&D target of 2.4% is important to note. And again, there is a roadmap, isn't there, for R&D across the piece. But what this spotlight really shines mainly on is the role of business and technology, which is in the gift of the private sector. So more needs to be done to give equal prominence to public service-led innovation, particularly given the role of the public sector in convening around the big societal challenges of the day. So that's ageing, mobility, climate, data, artificial intelligence, just to name a few. So a challenge-led approach is so important because it shines a light on things we don't have good enough answers to at present. It doesn't assume businesses are as usual, but more experimental approach to doing things better, rather than the same old things being done better. From a foundational and local economies point of view, this is important because the structure and shape we give to strategic investment matters. For example, it helps make sure that they are more equitable and sustainable. That's important. It targets different sectors, different communities, and gets more widespread benefits. There's no point in creating wealth if you can't ensure it gets spread around and impacts those that are most in need and those that need to access the opportunity the most. This is critical in the Cardiff Capital Region because we have some of the most prosperous and competitive areas, cheek by jowl with the least. Most prosperous and this is very much mirrored in our own county borough, as already been alluded to. So the Local Wealth Building Challenge Fund, which I lead for the CCR, is a critical one. We have to encourage innovation at local and foundational economy level. Sectors in the foundational economy, like food and food security, has been high on our list of priorities in light of Brexit. Tourism, hospitality, retail, high streets, care, public transport continue to be hammered by COVID-19. Some sectors will never be the same again. So we have to find new ways, better ways. Thinking differently means funding differently. And the Challenge Fund takes the ideas and concepts and puts them through phases of R&D to experiment and get the best possible answers to the questions we pose, rather than us accepting the same old. It brings together the public, private and community sectors to have a go at solving some of the big problems we face, with Innovate UK having invested more than 8 billion in this way of working. I think it presents Wales and CCR with great opportunities to think differently, to use innovative public procurement to procure innovation. I'm proud to lead this for the Regional Cabinet because it is pioneering, and I'm not afraid of standing for doing those things differently and ensuring our communities have access to cutting-edge thinking that can improve their lives and livelihoods. Not easy, as there are no set answers like in any other areas of what the CCR does, but I'm comfortable with that, as business as usual is not going to move us forward. COVID has shown us that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marsden. Members, if you have any questions or comments on the presentation, please turn your camera and microphone on when called and lower your hand by clicking again on the hands up button when you have finished making your representations. And Councillor John Ridgewell, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I kind of first apologise? If I put my camera on, I just disappear. So tonight I've had to go without almost everything. So you'll just have to hear my voice. What I really want to do is to thank Kelly and Frank. I mean, what can I say? You know, a hugely impressive catalogue of achievements, and all the more so given the last 12 months or so. I'm confident, and I share your confidence that together we will only go from strength to strength. Yeah, so thanks for the presentation. But more than that, thank you both for the amazing work that you're doing, and I know will continue to do. Good luck to you both. Thanks for allowing us to be part of the team, and let's go from strength to strength together.
Thank you, Councillor Ridgewell. Councillor Mike Adams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You say about putting your camera on, but of course the presentation paperwork is still up on the screen, so I don't know if anybody can see anyone else. Just going back to one of the things that Kelly did remind us of, and we need reminding of this all the time. No one else, of course, is waiting there for us to catch them up and go past. We've gone out of the top 10 of GVA, productivity and all of that. But we must look to get into through the top 20 and then through the top 30, or the bottom 30 and out of those, of course. So that's something that we must always remind ourselves. Other people who are competing for all the goodies that we're looking for will also be on the same Grand National track, and there's too many. How many were there? Were there 40 fences on Saturday? We've all got to climb over those, jump over those as quicker than the competition, and that's what we need to be. As the leader just said, we need to look to where we haven't been before, what we haven't done before, and look how exciting it can be if we get that right. So well done to the presentation, to Frank and Kelly, and we need to take that on board and really be encouraged by the fact that we think we made a good start. Let's make sure we have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. We are trying to sort out the screen sharing, but we'll continue while that's being sorted out in the background. Councillor Dix, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just a question, really. What work is being carried out to ensure that we're going to breathe new life into the many brownfield sites and former industrial sites around Caerphilly? They lie idle at the moment. A lot of them need a lot of work done on to clean them up. I just wonder what part of the city deal is looking at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would Kelly or Frank or somebody, Mrs. Harry indicated she'll take that one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure Kelly and Frank may want to offer their views as well. But in the presentation, you'll recall that one of the investments that is available is for strategic sites. and also there is the Housing Investment Fund. So we are very much targeting both of those funds for the very few brownfield sites that we do have available, because despite public opinion, in reality we have a handful of brownfield sites that are available, and each one of them we are looking to unlock. So we are targeting the opportunities that the Cardiff Capital Region offer, as well as other opportunities we're exploring as well to unlock those sites. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, Mayor, please. I think that's a really important point. Yes, you know, there are a proliferation of brownfield sites across the region, but we have similar viability issues on greenfield sites as well. So yes, we've got the Housing Viability Gap Fund, we've got the Strategic Premises Fund. But I think one of the frustrating things for me is, you know, there are lots of funds around, Welsh Government run funds, Development Bank run funds. I think what we've got to try and do is be a bit cleverer in terms of how we market and how we bundle these things up if we're going to get the scale and impact and critical mass that we have to have. So sometimes our issue isn't the lack of investment or funds. We've got to have more imagination, I think, in terms of how we bring these things together to have the big impacts that we need. And I think that the point that was made about our competitive strengths is a really important one. And just looking through the COVID crisis of those industries that have accelerated, every single one of those industries requires expansion space to be in growth markets. And this is where we've got to align those funds with the big strategic opportunities, but not forgetting the small businesses that we've got to bring along on the way through the supply chain development. So thanks for the question. I think is spot on.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Mann, please.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions, if I may. If I read the screen correctly, and so thank you both for the very interesting presentation. Forget the actual proportion, but the big proportion of the investment, 734 million, is in the metro. Now, did I read correctly that up to now we spent about 15 million on that, which seems to be a fairly small amount as time goes on?
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, the 495 million sits with us in the Cardiff Capital Region. The 734 million sits with Welsh Government and Transport for Wales. So they're investing that money at the moment. Our 15 million relates only to the Metro Plus scheme, which isn't core metro. It's local sustainable transport schemes that really take account of those areas who are not going to feel the impacts of metro straight away, at least. So ours is like a supplementary fund, if you like. This, just pardon the pun, but accelerating impact in communities that perhaps won't feel it for some time.
So it's the Welsh Government that is responsible in the main for that 734 million. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah, and I was very pleased to hear you say that there is an aim to spread the prosperity throughout the region. And I was struck by the quote that was right on the end of the thing by the Prime Minister of New Zealand, which I think is exactly right about you know, having prosperity all over rather than in bits and pieces, because I think certainly in this authority, we're very aware of the differences in prosperity. Or the further north you go, the more difficult things get for the people living there. But could I go on to the electric and the sustainability? I think there was a picture somewhere along the line of low emission vehicles. Well, I recall reading not long back that the scheme for Caerphilly for electric buses has been either scrapped or suspended. Now, I don't know whether that's to do with yourselves or not. Obviously, you'll tell me in a minute. But the other one was I saw a picture of a hydrogen car there. Now, I know of River Simple in Llandrindod. Are they expanding into the CCR region or not?
I can see Frank's dying to answer that.
I have to declare a conflict here because I act for River Simple. It's actually one of the most exciting projects I've had the pleasure of being involved with in my career. What they've been able to develop over 18 years is pure genius, and timing is everything in life, as we know. but they are actually now making some strides in terms of some substantial relationships with the likes of Siemens, who are supporting the project. It's a bit of a chicken and egg, as you probably know, Councillor Mann, in terms of what comes first, the vehicle or the infrastructure to provide the hydrogen. So then somebody has to break that particular standoff. And I think River Simple has got a very clever plan of how to get the refuelers into place as they release in the lead up to releasing the vehicles. But you'll also know that this is a model which is a new model for mobility. It's mobility as a service, whereby you don't actually buy the car, you subscribe for it, and over a 3-year period you pay a monthly subscription which covers all of the costs of the vehicle. So you're not paying for the manufacturer of the vehicle. The vehicle has a 20-year life. It is a fascinating project, and it's made in Wales, which, as you probably also know, is where the fuel cell was developed, which is the source of being able to turn hydrogen into electricity. And this is, I think, a fantastic opportunity for Wales to lead in that technology, in particular the region, because these factories will have to be built in at least 5 locations, and I'm hopeful, I'm pretty sure, the Cardiff Capital Region will receive some of that investment when we raise the money.
Could I say thanks very much for that answer. The only bit I'm not impressed with River Simple is the actual design of the bodywork. It seems very strange to me, but what I am interested in is I understand with a hydrogen vehicle, the emissions coming out are far cleaner than the air actually going in. So I think that's a huge advance. And we did actually have a motion into council a couple of years ago about hydrogen vehicles and the advantage of them. So I think that's the next step forward after the electric. I don't know if anyone knows anything about the electric bus thing that I asked about.
I can't answer on the electric bus thing specifically. I'm sure Mark will come in, but one of the things that Councillor Marsden and I are currently trying to work on is thinking about capacity within public services. Every single local authority in the region has a massive fleet, you know, whether it's refuse wagons, homeschool transport buses, Meals on Wheels, and, you know, thinking about how we can make that transition to low emission technologies, possibly hydrogen. And if you think about the procurement purchasing power of those 10 local authorities, and I think, you know, one of the things I can never get over is the parts systems, the cells for advanced propulsion systems are made in the Cardiff Capital Region. Meritor in Torfaen makes them, Newport Wafer Fab makes them. So there's got to be some innovation connection, I think we need to make here with, you know, indigenous local growth. So that's something, again, Councillor Mann, that we're trying to bring the 10 local authorities together around.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to come in now?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just pick up on Councillor Mann's query regarding the electric bus, which was central government funding given to Stagecoach. They required match funding by them, and obviously the public transport sector has had a very difficult sort of 12 to 18 months. So as a result of that, they have decided not to proceed at this stage because of the match fund element that they would have to put in.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Councillor Dix, please.
Sorry, Madam. I took my hand down. I thought, sorry.
That's okay, no problem.
Sorry.
We're not the only one having problems this evening. Councillor Graham Simmons, please.
Thank you. Yeah, we're coming to the end of the European structural funding, some 10.5 billion over 20 years. And believe it or not, there's no audit trail on the money. We've had GVA have actually fallen over the past 20 years. And yet I see from your total that with a possible maximum shoe-in of 4 billion, so there's just about 50% of the structural funding round, you're actually looking to increase GVA by 5%. I firmly believe that it's possible. The results over the last 12 months in medtech have been absolutely phenomenal. And the majority of the great breakthroughs have been made in this country. So the potential is clearly evident to the most blink-headed person. FinTech and artificial intelligence. Again, we are extremely well rooted in those subjects. But I'm deeply concerned, that there is no audit trail on structural funding, and will this be accountable? You know, I've asked the Welsh Government to the Audit Commission, to Caerphilly. Caerphilly can't tell me how much they've received over the years. There is no audit trail. The Welsh Assembly refuses to tell me. The Information Commissioner refuses to tell me, and so does the Auditor General refuse to tell me. So we've got lots and lots of public money available. It's the potential to actually increase our well-being, financial well-being, that is, of course, is obvious to everyone. And I'm worried about the accountability element, because it just doesn't seem to exist. We put money in and we walk away. We don't look at outcomes, very rarely look at outcomes. And it really concerns me. I know that's a ramble. I didn't have any prepared notes, but I'm really interested in where the money has gone and where the money will be going. Structural funding is a dead issue. We've lost that. This city region deal is about the best next option we've got. And I'm really concerned about the lack of accountability across the board in Wales.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and you know, appreciate the sentiment. But just to give you assurance on our funds, everything is reported openly and transparently. There's a lot of governance, I can assure you, a lot of reporting, and you know, we have internal, external audit, but ultimately we're accountable into a UK government gateway review process, which comes in and reviews us constantly. I did think we would just have one big review at the end of every 5 years, but actually, as Frank will attest, you know, our accounts, our processes, our procedures, our governance is being scrutinised all of the time. And I think, you know, in response to many of the points that you've made, that's the whole reason why we developed the investment framework. So there's openness and transparency around due diligence and the phases of the business case build programme. So by the time anything gets to regional cabinet, it's been through a fair few tests, challenges, committees and assessments. Probably a little bit too much at the moment. We probably haven't got that in proportion, but I think that's something that we can rectify as we move forward.
I think just to add to that, Councillor Simmons, the essence of having an evergreen fund means that we are very attuned and looking to see how we recover our funding. So it's not disappearing into some sort of grant pot. We are very keen to see that money come back and be used again and again. And I spent nearly 2 hours today with our risk management advisors talking specifically about financial risk, ESG, which is obviously environmental governance and social diversity, as well as looking at, you know, reputational risk and so forth. So I think I can certainly speak for my panel and for my board that we take this very personally. Reputational risk is something that none of us are prepared to take any risk on whatsoever.
If I may, please, Madam Chair.
Yes, you may.
With respect, I accept everything you said, but with the top 100 regions now, Caerphilly and Bridgend has just dropped out. Now, clearly, before that decision was made, put in the public domain, there was many, many months of consultation and negotiation. But we've no information at all. It hasn't filtered down. I've written to MPs, I've written to Assembly members, and I've written to Secretaries of States. And it's exactly the same as with structural funding. You get blanked. We get nothing. And the accountability is staggering by a submission. A private enterprise would never exist on this level. And it strikes me that as Caerphilly and Bridgend has been dropped off the 100 most desperate wards, this is a precursor to the levelling up funding that the government is, or the replacement for structural funding, if you will, 1.5 billion a year. Now, there's real money. It dwarfs the Cardiff City region over the lifetime of the Cardiff City region deal. And from then on, say a 20-year period, we are 1.5 billion pound a year to the good. And yet, regardless of all the many months of negotiation that went into all this, no one knows why we were dropped off. And I simply cannot get a realistic answer to what is, I consider to be quite a simple question.
If I can just say in response to that, I think there are some questions about ward inclusion in the Levelling Up Fund. I believe that debate is playing out now, and I believe that there's going to be a deep look into some of that. And apologies, I can't answer that because I just haven't been involved. But even your point, Councillor, 1.5 billion through a Levelling Up Fund, it's hardly anything. That is not big money. What we've got to get used to is knocking the door of the new National Infrastructure Bank, which has been capitalised with 12 billion, and they're lending at gilt bond rates, 0.6%. Competitive process is commercial finance, but that's where some of the bigger money is. So I get that levelling up will be locally important, but it's one small fund. We've got to get our eyes on the bigger prize, and I think gear up for going for that much wider investment.
Thank you. Councillor Priest, please.
Sounds on mute.
Denver, are you on mute?
Well, I wasn't. Madam Mayor, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Fine, thank you. Just saying that, council was 30 years. I've always been a little bit apprehensive about the big deals, the big projects that come out. But I must be honest, over the last 5 years, it seems to me, as with the city deal, as it was called, seems to be a lot more thought and perhaps progression gone into it. I hope I'm right. I'm hoping I'm going to be right, definite, because I think now that with things progressing forward, and especially with the pandemic being in, it proved just how good we are in different industries. I'm hoping that the projections going forward, and I am listening to our speakers tonight, and I thank them for that. I am listening to the professional people, and I hope, and I really hope, and I will be more than pleased to think that the progress being made on this is going to give us a definite good outcome. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sean Morgan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to say thank you to Frank and Kelly for the excellent presentation. I haven't got a question to ask because I have been following the city deal very closely, and I've got to say it's really is maturing into something much bigger and much more beneficial and much more exciting than I ever imagined at the beginning when back when Keith Reynolds signed into that deal on behalf of the council. I'd like to speak to it from a well-being, a future generations champion. You know, when you raise GVA, and it's not the only measure, as I think Councillor Mann mentioned in the last slide, the quote there from Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, economic growth accompanied by worsening social outcomes is not success. And it absolutely is not success. We're not here to enrich the top 1%. This deal is set to spread the well-being. So when you raise the GVA of a region, when you improve public transport, when you improve opportunities for all, you improve well-being. So what the city deal is doing, it's definitely improving the well-being for this generation, but the work that's going on there and this evergreen money which gets back in and reinvested, the well-being improvements are going to reverberate through the years and improve the well-being of future generations. So I would personally like to thank the regional cabinet and Councillor Marsden, who represents us so well on that cabinet. But I would also like to thank Kelly and her officers for all the incredible, innovative and inclusive work that you've been doing. So just to say, I'm 100% behind this. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I know your contributions to the CSE Foundry Board are really appreciated as well. Just to say, I share your hopes, but some things we will get wrong. Some things I'm very sure we will fail at, but hopefully, you can all see that's part and parcel of trying, because if we don't try, we fail by omission, and that's the thing that really scares me to death.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Something I meant to ask earlier, so thank you for letting me come back. I know one of you, Kelly or Frank, mentioned outcomes in the presentation, and I note the aim is to create 25,000 jobs at the end of the sort of deal period. What is your best estimate of where we are on that journey?
Yeah, it's very much an estimate, Madam Mayor, if I can answer that. I think on one of the first slides, I think 2,500 is where we see things currently. But, job creation is an industry in itself in terms of the metric, because there's induced, there's indirect, there's jobs related in supply chains, there's jobs safeguarded. And, sometimes I think it's not helpful to have a job figure, because it gets you hung up on job numbers. And I think it's the quality of jobs that we need to be preoccupied with. And sometimes in an innovation economy, the productivity of jobs doesn't always equate to job numbers. So it's something that we're working on all of the time. I mean, some of the reports that we've had back on economic impact assessments of things like Cardiff Central Station, they're talking about tens of thousands of jobs, but I always hear caution, because I don't want to get carried away with those big headline job numbers. I think that we've got to be much more considerate. And I think going back to Councillor Morgan's comment about, well-being versus GVA, one of the things that Frank and I are trying to do at the moment is get some better intelligence from the experts about, well-being impact. What does that account for, and how do we start to record some of this stuff as well? So I don't think there's any easy answers. Apologies, Councillor Mann. I think all you'll get from us is just trying to be as honest as possible, because I don't want to expose ourselves by quoting big numbers and then being hostages to fortune. I'm not sure that really helps anyone, but completely take your point, and I think it's something that we've just got to keep trying to get better at.
Well, thanks, Kelly, for attempting to give me an honest answer. And anyone who mentions tens of thousands of jobs, I completely turn off, because it's normally pie in the sky. But one thing I was impressed with, that you are attempting as far as possible to recycle the money and reuse the investments, and I think that's an excellent side of what is being done. Thanks again.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Skivens, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. A lot of interesting information there. One simple question I have is obviously the involvement of the private sector is absolutely paramount in this project moving forward. And we're quite clear as elected members on how our involvement is controlled in the process. But what about people who are joining from the private sector? How are they, to use a term, how are they policed in that they have to satisfy their own shareholders and stakeholders in their company, and yet we're using them in the midst of this project, sometimes directly from companies?
Yeah, thanks for that. And again, it's a very relevant point. And again, the private sector interest that we have is purely in an advisory capacity. So there's no direct link with decision making. It's all appropriately regulated and enforced through the due diligence processes and also through the Treasury business case model. But we've got a very, very clear process for things like declarations of interest, disclosures of interest, which are updated. If anyone has an interest related to an investment, then they don't get to have any involvement in it. And we're as clear cut as that. The issue is the Cardiff Capital Region's a small place. You know, lots of people know lots of people. There's lots of shared interests. I think what we've tried to do is be as pragmatic about it, put proper policies in place, make sure they're regularly reviewed. And at the end of the day, the only people that get to make decisions in this process who are accountable for public money are the regional cabinet.
And that includes board members as well, does it?
A regional cabinet, yes, Councillor Skivens, is just the 10 leaders of each of the councils. They are the only ones that make up the joint committee board, so they're the only ones that have those vested decision-making powers. Everyone else, including myself, we're mere policy advisors.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you. And can I say thank you for all the questions and comments in relation to both Frank and Kelly's presentation this evening. I think it's been a really good chance to air in this forum the fantastic work that's going on in the CCR and how it's developed into a mature process, you know, for all concerned. It absolutely resonates with me in terms of that evergreen fund, because I think that's fundamental in the way we refund and reinvent and you know, reinvest, because I think that is so important. And as Kelly will know, you know, I keep going on about quality jobs. It's about the quality jobs that we need in our, you know, the well-paid, the good terms and conditions. They're the things we really want to see. We want to see solutions for our businesses. We want to help see them grow. And for me, it's so important that we're at that table, you know, and banging on about those things. It is, as Councillor Morgan just highlighted as well, it's fantastic to see the maturity and the journey that the CCR has gone on. So, you know, I'm really proud to be part of that process. You know, it is incredibly interesting, but it's about shaping the region, you know, and looking at it through a completely different lens and hoping that we touch every part of that region so that everyone benefits. So thank you, both Kelly and Frank, for attending tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Kelly and Frank, for your presentation and attendance this evening. Moving on, we'll move on to item 10, which is the review of the service levels and decision-making processes for the development, management and planning enforcement functions of the planning service. Councillor Sean Morgan, can you introduce the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This report provides a review of service delivery and decision-making processes for the development, management and enforcement functions of the planning services. It also seeks approval for amendments to the scheme of delegation, the member protocols and amendments to the size of the planning committee. The report was considered by the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of December. And the scrutiny endorsed the recommendations subject to the exclusion of recommendation 3.1D relating to proposed changes to the scheme of delegation. Now, although the scrutiny committee accepted that planning committee should not deal with a plethora of all the minor development proposals, it was felt they should deal with minor proposals if they are a matter of great concern or controversy within a ward. The main concern around recommendation D was the high threshold of objections that was proposed to allow a call-in request for the planning committee to consider the application. The report was then subsequently considered by the planning committee on the 20th of January, where, taking into account the views of the scrutiny committee, the planning committee determined that they were generally supportive of the recommendations in 3.1, but they also expressed the reservation about endorsing the recommendation D. Following discussion, it was moved and seconded that the recommendation D in relation to the scheme of delegation be endorsed, subject to the following amendment of the wording. And the amendment of the wording is call in any planning application where a member has requested in writing on material planning grounds to the head of regeneration and planning within the 21-day consultation period that the application should be considered by the planning committee. So that power remains with members. The content of the report has been the subject of extensive discussion with elected members, and as such, I endorse the comments. I was going to read that I endorse the recommendations. I was going to read all the recommendations out, but we've been here for quite some time. So if I would just like to say that I'm happy to move the report and the recommendations contained within from A to E. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Soares, please.
Yes, can I just second those recommendations, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Having been moved and seconded, the debate is now in order. Members, if you have any comments, please indicate now using the hands up button. Councillor Kevin Etheridge, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a number of comments here, and I'd like to ask for the support of Councillor Morgan and Councillor Marsden at the end, when I'd like to try and move a constructive motion. Looking at the report, I could go through each point, 5.4, 5.6, but a budget saving of 337k, reduction of staff and resources on enforcement. Bit concerned to read, and perhaps people could clarify it. Have we only got currently 2 enforcement officers for the whole of the Caerphilly County Borough? If that is the case, I did read that in the report, you know, that is sort of unacceptable. Also, I assume that this reporter has been through the consultation with staff and the trade unions. It does refer in 5.42 about complaints through the enforcement complaint procedure must be done online. Is this mandatory? Because obviously that would concern me if it is. I'm also concerned about the definition of the scope of the delegation to officers, as it does seem that more decisions are to be delegated. And I also see that we haven't got a scheme yet for the national delegation. That's not been sort of introduced, Madam Mayor. Reference, if you look at 5.56 of the report, it refers to, as reference to uncertainty to members, officers and the public. But if you then look at 5.49, it states significant resources were deployed to train the 20 members on the decision-making process. Also on 5.58, there's reference here to if a statutory consultee puts in an objection, that does not automatically trigger it go into planning. Now, that concerns me, Madam Mayor, because if there is an objection and, you know, from a statutory consultee and it doesn't go to planning committee, will we be, you know, could there be litigation problems? Then if we go on, there's lots of comments about the scope and scheme of delegated powers. But if I turn now to the actual protocol, it says in 2.7, it says members who are not on the planning committee and are not decision makers should avoid inappropriate social contact with objectors and any other interested parties. So are we saying there that if Kevin Etheridge, who's not on the planning committee, he's got to be careful. He mustn't have any inappropriate social contact with the objectors. Now, again, that concerns me because you know the developments we've had in Blackwood with Persimmon, you know, and people may read that, and I'd like Sean's view on this. People may read that as, is there a gagging order on local members? Now, it doesn't say gagging order, but it does say that, you know, we need to not have social contact. Then it says on 2.11, members can only give officers their concerns, and officers will not enter into material considerations or debate with elected members. So I haven't got much more to go, Madam Chair, but you know, we are reducing the members of public to a maximum of only 2 members at a site meeting. Now, does that include the developer side? Does that include the objector side? I can see there being, how is that going to be monitored or policed? You can't say that we're going to only have 2 members of the public there. 2.15, members are not provided with any paper copies of a planning application. So does this apply to the public as well, who haven't got internet facilities? Will they have to go to the libraries? And there's no reference in here. There's reference if there's, and I use the Blackwood ward again, if there's 3 independents in the ward, or if there's 3 Labour, only 1 member can speak. Fair comment, but for 5 minutes, there's still the 5-minute rule is still here. Now, I don't think that's fair and reasonable. If you've got 3 members in a ward, whether they are, you know, Plaid or Labour or Independent, they may want to speak about certain aspects of the actual planning application, like the environmental impact assessment, like the ecological side. And, you know, I've got difficulty with that, Madam Mayor. Finally, and I'd like to ask Councillor Morgan and Councillor Marsden, can we please defer the recommendations and set up a working group of 7 councillors, 4 Labour, 2 Plaid and 1 Independent, to examine and look at these policies, process, decision-making, delegated powers, and report back in the autumn? Because it, you know, as I said, a national scheme of delegation has not been introduced, and I believe this focus group or this working party could help the council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Morgan, you've got your hand up. Do you want to start?
Yeah, if I could respond first before I ask Ryan Thomas or Ryan Kite to come in. I mean, first of all, there were many questions there, and I did hear while I was trying to look at the answer to one question, I did hear something about gagging orders, and you mentioned my name. Well, firstly, I can assure you there is no gagging orders in this policy. I would not support the setting up of a working group. I would say that this has been through a scrutiny committee, which I believe there are independent members on there where they could have made these representations. Indeed, you could have yourself asked to have spoken to that committee. I know also that this report went through a planning committee who examined it again very closely. I don't believe that any independent members take their seat, their position on the planning committee. You know, it's a decision-making committee. I don't think it's an area that the independents actually seem to enjoy when it comes to making decisions. So no, I would not support the setting up of a working group, as you've had ample opportunity to question this report over the past many months, Councillor Etheridge. In regards to your plethora of questions, I'm now going to ask Mr. Ryan Thomas if he'd like to answer at least some of them. There were so many, I don't know if anybody picked up on them all. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan, Madam Mayor. I'll just go through what I picked up. As you say, there was lots of questions in there, and as Councillor Morgan indicated, this has been through a number of committees, including Scrutiny and Planning Committee, and this is probably the first time some of these have been raised. So I'll in terms of enforcement staff, you are correct, Councillor Etheridge. There are two enforcement officers for the county borough at the moment, and that, as the report touches upon, that is not a sustainable level. However, we have secured at council back in January additional resources, and I'm in the process of recruiting, so I'm actually interviewing tomorrow for 3 staff. I appointed a SIL officer last week, and I'm interviewing for a principal officer next week. So we are in the process of trying to deal with that issue, and I would hope in time that we'll be able to provide a far more effective and efficient service in that respect. And obviously the service is underpinned by the staff. We have to have the staff levels really to provide a efficient service. I mean, it was interesting to hear the presentation earlier by CCR. Really ambitious and inspiring presentation and prospects ahead. But we have to have a planning system that can deliver that, and it has a strategic focus, both in terms of the way that we operate and in this decision making, and that's what that underpins this report really. In terms of online complaints, we have set up an online form, as you indicated. That's to ensure that complaints are received in a single way. So historically, complaints have come from a whole range of directions, making it very difficult to manage, prioritise, allocate, and so on. But there is officer support. So if members or the public have difficulty in terms of completing that form, it allows those who do have access to upload as much information as they have to inform the investigation right at the outset. But those who don't will not be excluded. We have support. The officers are available to assist, so that shouldn't be an issue. Again, the scheme of delegation does seek to, as I indicated earlier, provide a more strategic focus to decision making. But just to allay your concerns about statutory consultees, we wouldn't be subject to challenge or litigation in that respect. There's no requirement for us to do that, and obviously all decisions are made in accordance with the development plan and policies, and any departure from the policy under the scheme of delegation would come to committee in any event. So there is a catch-all there. On the protocol, there were a lot of comments, and I mean, essentially what that protocol is attempting to achieve is clarity in terms of expectations and the way that members can operate, and the public can clearly be aware of the role that ward members have, and it's very important in terms of representing your local community. I would add that the reference to inappropriate social conduct, that is already in the council constitution. There's no change there, so that's just underpinning really the way that officers and members should behave in public office. So there's no change in that respect. and the subsequent paragraphs obviously seek to nail that down in terms of the way that we would want to move forward in terms of officer time and member input into the process.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Councillor Marsden, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And without repeating what Ryan has just touched on there in terms of recruitment, as you know, we passed money for the budget to actually recruit into this department, much needed, as we very much aware. I'm also very conscious that this report has made its way through the democratic processes, scrutiny, planning, etc., and has met each stage and be passed at each stage. So this evening is to complete that journey of this report. So therefore, I do not support your request to set up a task and finish group in relation to this, because it's already gone through the due process and due diligence as afforded to this report. So I cannot report that. I cannot support that. Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether Ryan wants to still come in if there's anything else that's not been covered.
No, I'm comfortable that Ryan's covered everything. The only other point really that was a question around paper copies of planning applications, I think, Councillor Etheridge, and obviously that's around us becoming electronically savvy really, and in terms of anyone who can't access computers and stuff, obviously they can always come into our reception where there's machines and we could assist them in accessing anything. So, and obviously as we move forward with different ways of working, we'll be reviewing all of that as well. So anyone who has asked us in the past for specific pieces of paper, we have quite often, if it's people with difficulty, photocopied them and sent them on anyway. But obviously it is to be discouraged. There is a charge and an environmental cost to that. So it's just that really.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I heard correctly that site meetings were going to be limited to 2 members. Now, I've always understood the idea of a site meeting is to, for, well, as many members as possible to appreciate the actual situation actually on the ground. And if I did hear correctly, I was wondering what the thinking is behind that, because it seems to go against what I thought site meetings, or one of the reasons that site meetings were actually held.
Mr. Thomas, would you like to take that one? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. No, this doesn't relate to planning committee site visits. And you're correct, we would want as many members who needed to be informed by a site visit in terms of their decision making to attend. This is about discussions during an application between ward members and officers, for example, in terms of representing the local community. So that's what it relates to. Just trying to manage that type of part of the process to ensure that it doesn't become unmanageable moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Owen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a bit of clarification, please. When we discussed this at scrutiny, the main sticking point on the recommendations was the point D about the changes to the scheme of delegation. And there was quite a big debate on that. Cross-party supported that we didn't really want to sort of have too much change to that. And I thought, and I'm asking the question here, I thought that the outcome of that is that as a scrutiny committee, we were saying that we didn't want changes to that and that was going to be taken forward. So when it left scrutiny, are we looking at what left scrutiny? Because I don't think we are. Or did it get changed further along the line? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, can I redirect that back to you, or is somebody else better off answering that?
Yeah, no, I will attempt to answer that. From my recollection of it, the scrutiny committee wanted to throw out the little d in the recommendations as a whole. Although if you go back and look at the recording, much of the discussions was simply about the member call-in. That was where the majority of the discussion came about. So it was a bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So when that report then went to planning committee, they discussed it around that and sort of took the recommendation D apart, and it was that part which they decided that the scrutiny committee hadn't been happy with. Therefore, that was the part of it that was taken out. So members still have the power to call it in without having to get an amount of signatures or whatever it was that was written in there.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Mr. Thomas, please.
Excuse me, could I just come back on that, Madam Mayor?
I didn't know if Mr. Thomas had something else to add to that.
All right, okay.
No, that's fine, Madam Mayor. Councillor Morgan's covered that point adequately.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Owen.
Thank you. Yeah, so basically what we're saying is what left scrutiny is what's in the report. That was the question I asked. Because it doesn't appear to be that it is.
No, what left scrutiny was a recommendation, and I say a recommendation that the whole of where are we? That the whole of recommendation D was to be removed, but there's just been a change in that. If Ryan would like to explain that further.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Morgan. Essentially, that part of the scheme of delegation, which is the call-in process, is virtually unchanged from what currently operates today. So, so what planning committee discussed, and there was a long debate on this. They discussed whether there was merit in amending the current scheme of delegation to tighten it up, to provide clarity in terms of the type of applications that need to be considered at committee outside of the call-in process. So under the current scheme of delegation, major applications can be determined by officers. In the proposed scheme of delegation, all major applications must come to committee. Now, what that does, it provides that focus for members in terms of the role of planning committee, but also provides real clarity from the outset for the applicant, for members, for officers. It's clear that those types of applications have to go to committee from the outset. So you're not waiting for a call-in request later on in the process. You can, in terms of managing an application through a process, it's clear it goes to committee, and there's no debate. So that's the type of thing that we need to do to tighten up the scheme of delegation. So the existing call-in process remains pretty much unchanged. But there are other parts to that scheme of delegation which planning committee felt needed to be introduced to tighten it up and provide that clear clarity on determining applications of that nature.
If I can come back, please, Madam Mayor, because that doesn't answer the question. We threw it out, which I thought we did. It's back in there, and we weren't informed as far as I know. And it's giving the planning committee a more strategic role and focus, which was one of the arguments and the points that we were fighting against, or not fighting against, but talking against. So why do we're now receiving this report with something that was cross-party? There was quite a lot of voices on the Labour group, I recall, and now it is in this report going forward. And as far as I know, it never came back to us to say, well, yes, we've taken this forward, it's now been taken out, but now it's back here and we're expected to vote on it tonight. So in other words, it's been put back by the back door, perhaps. That's what it seems like to me.
If I can bring in Councillor Whitcomb, I think he might be able to add something to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As chair of the Housing Committee and a member of the Planning Committee, there was great debate on the original item. I do not think that there's been a reversal of fortune and introduction of measures to prevent elected members representing their constituents when they have a problem with the planning application. I concur with Councillor Morgan's interpretation and Ryan Thomas's interpretation that there's very little has changed in terms of the call-in process, but for elected members to object, to say, look, we want this to go to full committee. Indeed, this week, me and Mr. Thomas had a debate about exchange of emails about a particular planning application in my own ward, which is going to be referred to the planning committee. And I don't see any difference in this recommendation and these recommendations to what was debated at Housing and Regeneration, and was also debated at the planning committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcomb. Councillor John Ridgewell, then, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, apologies for no camera, but as I've already said, my system isn't working. This was just a question for Councillor Morgan. I recall in one of his responses, I'm sure he said that, in fact, there are no independent members on the planning committee. Just for complete clarity, perhaps he could just confirm that independent members are entitled to be on the planning committee, and they've been invited to sit on the planning committee, but they've always refused. I just want clarity on that, if we could, please.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Point of order.
Yeah,
that's nothing to do with what we're discussing here. We're discussing the report, and we're not discussing what members are on any committee. Point of order, please.
Can I take some advice on that one, please?
I mean, the reason that was mentioned was because if an independent, I mean, Councillor Etheridge was making representations, they could have, if they did take their seat on a planning committee, which, as I say, is a decision-making committee, perhaps they're not comfortable with making those decisions, but they could have then had a second chance to scrutinise the report that's in front of us again tonight.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, you've still got your hand raised. Can I ask you to lower it? And Councillor Ridgewell, please. And I'll call Councillor Dix, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification around the point of how many members will be able to address the committee during the committee process when a plan application goes to full committee. Can you just have some clarification around that? Will it be 1, 2, or 3 members, you know, many other members in that ward will be able to speak? Because I think it's important that is cleared up tonight, and we know exactly what it entails, the changes you're proposing. Just on another point, if Councillor Ridgewell and Councillor Morgan are worried about someone taking a place up on the planning committee from the independents, I'm quite happy to do that and play a role there anytime you're willing to put me on the committee.
Mr. Thomas, would you like to answer Councillor Dix's first question, please?
Certainly, in the protocol, it recommends that in multi-member wards, only one member from each political group should normally exercise speaking rights, unless obviously there's different views or they've got different issues to raise. So again, it's a protocol to try and govern that and focus business at planning committee, but it says normally. I mean, it's down to interpretation depending on the circumstances. What we don't want, and I don't think anybody really benefits from, a number of members speaking at committee and just raising the same issues over and over again. That doesn't assist in the decision-making process, and it's just to make business more efficient. And that's the recommendation in the.
Thank you, Ryan. So just to get that clear in my head, if you have 2-member, 3-member ward, whatever it is, and they've all got different issues they're talking about to the planning committee, they will all be able to speak.
It says unless they have opposing views.
So if the members want to speak on different issues concerning the planning application, different aspects of it, will they be able to speak?
Under the protocol, it's clear that there need to be opposing views. But I said it talks about will normally exercise. It's not black and white in that respect.
So who will decide?
It's normally the chairman's discretion, as it is in the current approach.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Councillor Morgan, do you want to respond to Councillor Dix? You're on mute, Sean.
Yeah, just to say that thank you, Councillor Dix, for offering to take up a position on there. As I say, there's been no independence on there, and I will be talking to the committee services and seeing if we can get you on that planning committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, if I can assist members there, Councillor Dix won't be able to take the independent seat on the planning committee because Councillor Dix isn't a member of a group. The only committee he can take part in really is this committee, the full council. Okay, if you joined the independents, Councillor Dix, that would be entirely different. But you would need to be a member of the independent group to take the independence position on the planning committee. I hope that that clarifies your query. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Mr. Tranter, I do find it extraordinary that as an elected member, and not being that I'm sort of cannot sit on a committee because I'm not a member of a political grouping and I sit as an independent. I find that extraordinary, to be honest with you, and I expect the public will as well. That, you know, I would hope that all members, whether they sit in political groups or not, would all be treated with the same respect and have the same powers. I find that extraordinary.
Thank you, Councillor Dix. Councillor Mike Adams, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. Actually, just to follow up on Mr. Tranter's response on that, there have been discussions in the past between myself and Councillor Dix when I've said there's no independence, and he said, I'd like to go on it. And I've had to tell him then, because the last place on the planning committee out of 20 was determined would have to go to the independent group, which he wasn't a member of. It would be impossible unless we change the constitution, basically, which goes along with Mr. Tranter. He's remained an independent, so the place that Councillor Etheridge would like the independents to take up, if he was so minded, is theirs to do, but they don't want it. Because that would mean sometimes they'd have to actually make a decision, in my belief. But there we go. That's been the subject of point of order. But there we go. There's the answer. Thanks.
I find it extraordinary, as I said, that the council does not facilitate councillors who are independent of any political groupings at all, or groups of independents. That they
Point of order,
through
the chair.
Yes, I was just about to interrupt. Anyway, perhaps we would need to discuss this outside of this meeting as a further point, because we are moving away from the body of the report. Right, Councillor Owen, you've got your hand up. You've already spoken once. Is it on a different point to do with the discussion, please?
Yes, Madam.
Order,
yes.
Madam. You've spoken 4 times.
Yes, Madam.
Well,
yes,
I will allow it this time, but make it very brief, please, because there are people who have not spoken. Thank you.
All I would like to say, just to finish this off, I've made my points, and thank you for that. We have this thrown back in our faces all the time about the independence, but all I want to say is that in Risca West, my co-councillor is Councillor Ross Whiting, and at the very start of me being elected, Councillor Ross Whiting was actually on the planning committee. I know he's now a cabinet member, and for the years that he was, Councillor Etheridge asked me about going on planning, and I said yes I would, but I couldn't because there would be two from the same ward. So we would have had somebody on there for 3 years, but that again is constitutional. We couldn't have two on there from the same ward. So I want to put that in the pot, because this business of not having anybody on there keeps being thrown at us, and I would have been on there for 3 years. So that's all the point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this may be covered in one way, but I do recall quite some time ago that somebody who was an independent was actually nominated, I think, by the ruling group to actually join a committee. Now, the law and various things may have changed since that, but I thought there was a certain amount of discretion if the ruling group was agreeable to a certain nomination in this way.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I'm going to hand that back to Mr. Tranter. Perhaps he could clear this up for us and then take us to the vote. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, Councillor Mann. It's quite convenient that we have an annual meeting of council next month, so perhaps we can clarify that position then. But my understanding is that because Councillor Dix isn't a member of a group, because the way the political balance rules work, that effectively stops him being part of a committee. The other point that's been raised tonight, which I must admit I wasn't aware of, was that you couldn't have two councillors from the same ward on a planning committee. That is absolutely news to me. So again, I'll clarify that in time for the annual meeting. That rule seems very, very strange to me, in that Councillor Owen and Councillor Whiting are from different parties. So I will check on that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I've just had some advice to bring either Mrs. Kite or Mr. Thomas in on that point, as I understand it was part of planning policy that came in a couple of years ago. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I have a point of order? Is this relevant to the report? This is a different issue altogether. A point of order on that. We spent so much time on this. This is a matter to be dealt outside of this report. It's not relevant to the report. And
it is relevant. Councillor Davis,
it
is relevant to the report as it has been raised. You know, it is all about planning procedures. So if we can just take this point from either Mrs. Kite or Mr. Thomas, and then we can move to the vote. Thank you. Mrs. Kite, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I must be completely honest. I'd have to check that myself, because I'm not aware of the planning policy you refer to, because that wouldn't be appropriate as planning policy. That would be a constitutional matter.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Just bear with me a second.
Thank you, Rhiannon. You're supporting what I just said.
Okay, Emma Sullivan from Committee Services will help us with that, and she will distribute the appropriate advice to everyone. And if there's no other further questions on the report, I will hand over to Mr. Tranter for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So members, shortly you will have a poll in front of you that you will need to vote on, please. So when that poll becomes available on your screen, can you vote? And I'll give you 60 seconds to vote, please. It's still not on my screen. There we are. So there it is, members. So if you could please vote on the recommendations within the report. Thank you.
I haven't got the vote in the box come up by Mr. Tranter, so I'll be voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor Dix. I'll make a note of that, Councillor Dix. Thank you.
I've just got, Councillor Sorrells, I've just got a blank voting form, but I will be voting for the recommendations, obviously, because I seconded them.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrells. I've made a note of that. Any other members having difficulties, please?
Yeah, Mr. Tranter, Councillor Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I also haven't got it on my screen, but I am for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeremiah. I've made a note of that. Any other members, please?
Mr. Tranter, Councillor Adams.
Yes.
I didn't expect to, as a guest, to be able to get the voting panel on the screen, but it did. It seemed to accept my yes vote, and I submitted it. So just in case it didn't go as we would normally expect, it was a yes vote.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I've made a note of that. Thanks, Councillor Adams. But I would have thought it will work, but we will check on that clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, any other members then, please?
Yeah, Rob, I got nothing on my screen.
Yeah.
So I'm voting yes.
Thank you, Councillor Angel. I've made a note of that. Anybody else, please?
Yes, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. And your vote will be?
For.
Thank you. Any other members, please? No. Madam Mayor, the vote is carried. Voting electronically, there were 40 for the recommendations, 8 against and 3 abstentions. And voting orally, there were 5 for and 1 against. So the recommendations in the report are carried. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Tranter. Councillor Dix, you've still got your hand raised. Is that an old hand? Before I move on, that's great. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, it's the Welsh Government Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Rate Relief Scheme 2021 to 2022. Members, this report was considered as an urgent item to Cabinet and in line with the requirements of the Constitution is referred to Council to note. So noted. And item 12 is the Welsh Government Strategy, I can't get this out, Welsh Government Strategy Sites Programme Opportunities for Nest Tar Caerphilly. Members, this report was also considered as an exempt and urgent item to Cabinet and in line with the requirements of the Constitution is referred to Council to note. So noted. Thank you. Councillor Mann, you have got your hand raised.
Is it possible to ask a couple of questions on the last report, Mayor?
I'm going to have to hand that over to Mr. Tranter because of the public interest test. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, well, we don't normally debate these items, Councillor Mann, but clearly if you want to ask some questions, you can do so. But I would ask members, before you consider Councillor Mann's questions, if they are about this report, then you need to consider the public interest test. In that, the Cabinet considered this in exempt session, and I would be recommending that you similarly consider this report in exempt session. Unless the questions are generic, Councillor Mann, if they will raise issues that clearly that are within the report, I would recommend that we will need to exclude the press and public now.
I think Mr. Tranter may you would probably rule that we need to go into exempt session.
Okay, so therefore, Madam Mayor, the council will need to decide whether or not to exclude the press and public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tranter. Councillor Morgan, please.
Madam Mayor, as the appendices are clearly marked exempt and the Cabinet went through a public interest test, I would move that if we are to have any discussions on this report, that we move into an exempt session as recommended but by our section 151 officer. I don't know if anybody would like to second me on that.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor. Mike
Thank
Adams.
you. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Mr. Tranter, what do we do next? Vote.
We'll need to take a vote on that, Madam Mayor. There may be a poll coming up, and there is as I speak. So if members could vote on that, please. Yes, no, abstain, and then press the submit button, please. Thank you. Once again, are any members having difficulty voting? It's carried.
Yes.
Anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you be yes, Councillor Dix? Yeah. Any other members having difficulty?
Yeah, Councillor Jeremiah again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you are a yes.
The same applied for me, Mr. Tranter.
Yeah.
It's a yes, obviously.
Yeah.
But I did manage to vote.
Okay. Therefore, Madam Mayor, the pit is clearly carried and the press and public will be excluded. So before Councillor Mann asks these questions, we'll just have to turn off the recording. So if you could give us a couple of minutes